Welcome back to the Stephan Hogan podcast. It's great to have you here. Hope you are doing well. Today's guest is Vince Gill. He is the most awarded country musician of all time. He's on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's in my favorite band of all time, the Eagles. And it's kind of a full circle thing when you sit down and you get to actually interview someone that is in your favorite band of all time that you were listening to on a cassette when you were a little kid driving around with your dad as he was in his old Toyota Tacoma. And it's pretty fun. He's a great guy. I've gotten to know him over the years, and we go into some important things like belief in self and how in the hard days he still believed in himself and kept pushing forward. We talk about him being in the Eagles and what that's like. We talk about him playing a song at Soundcheck one day, and Don Henley says, "What song is that? What is that?" And he says, "Oh, this is a song I had out some years back." And Don said, "We need to put this in the set." And Vince said, "With all due respect, I don't want to give these people one more reason not to like me. They didn't come here to hear the country guy. They came here to hear the Eagles." His view of himself and his position in the world is one that is truly inspiring, and I hope you enjoy hearing Vince Gill.
I think most people see me as a singer first. You know, my voice is always kind of overshadowed my playing. You know, the playing part of it with, I think a lot of people is almost construed as background. You know, and so then they're surprised to find out that you can play.
Yeah.
You know? So I had no idea you were the guitar player that you are. And I said, well, that's fair, you know, because most people, you know, really, when it comes to music, they're interested in the singer and the song.
Yeah.
You know, they don't notice the drummer. They don't notice the guitar player. They don't notice those kinds of things. They're mostly focused on the thing right in front of them. And that's the majority, I think, of music listeners. And so you kind of know going in that all that's gonna, you know, I never tried to force the musician side of me to the people and let them discover it rather than try to show them that. And especially in country music, because country music's never been real heavily centered on guitar heroes like rock and roll and like the blues and like other forms of music. And you go throughout the history of country music and you don't see a lot of shredders, you know, guys that can really do both, you know. George Jones was not a shredder. Haggard was a good guitar player. Buck Owens was a good guitar player. You know, they all more or less thought of as shredders. Chet was pretty damn good. He could really go. He wasn't a great singer. You know, he'd tell you that himself, but he was compelling when he would sing. You know, he didn't make you think of the great singers so much, but he sure loved the spirit in which he sang with.
Yeah.
There's a new tribute record coming out to Chet in a couple of months that I did a song on, and I chose to do a song of his that he sang as opposed to one that he played, because I knew everybody would go towards the ones that he played, and it's a fantastic song and turned out great. But he was the first person I ever saw play live.
Really?
When I was a little boy, and I was so taken with the humbleness in which he played with. He was never making faces to make you think it was hard or showing off or trying to draw attention to himself. He played with a beauty and a simplicity and a humbleness that was, you know, kind of life-changing for me to see.
In what way?
Just that it was so effortless looking, the way he played, but yet he wasn't trying to sell you.
How old were you?
I don't know, 7 maybe.
Oh, wow.
7 or 8 probably.
So when you look back to like 7 or 8, like your first concert experience, and it leaves this probably crazy impression on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made you, it's, I don't know if it's any different when you go watch a great game and see a basketball game and see great players shoot and run and dribble and be great at what they do. It might inspire you to want to play basketball. That was one of the things that inspired me to want to continue to play the guitar. You know, it was music has always spoken to me. You know, everybody's got their interests of things that speak to them, and music is not that for a lot of people. You know, but it sure was for me.
Yeah, and your dad was.
He played a little bit.
A little bit of.
Yeah, he played guitar and sang and played the banjo a little bit, and he wasn't great. I didn't know that, but he showed me 3 or 4 chords. It was all he knew. And I just jumped in, never quit.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's kind of how it was with me. I feel like my dad knew the cowboy chords, I guess we call them these days.
Yeah. Mine showed me 3 or 4 chords and said, well, that's all I know. You're on your own.
Yeah.
And so.
That's what, for some reason, I think that's what drew me to country music, was because at the time growing up, it was the only format that had guitars on it at a certain extent, like at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a California guy, but it's country anyway, which I don't even want to go there.
No, California made some of the best country music that's ever been made.
Yeah, yeah.
Hands down. Nobody would dispute that or argue that.
Yeah. You did a record, Bakersfield.
Yeah. I mean, nobody cares where it comes from. I don't care what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'm never trying to identify something before I hear it or experience it. And I think that's what we do as a culture that is flawed.
Mm.
We try to label it, tell you what it is before you experience it. It's why you've got 2 hours of people talking about who's going to win the game before they play it. Like, let them play it and then find out,
And in that vein, you told me one time, when we first met, or when I first moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
We talked on the phone for a little while. I was going through a hard time, and since being here, it's been hard. I mean, moving here and doing the music thing is not easy. And I remember that you said let go of the results.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just gonna say, I feel like what you just said about the culture, everyone's trying to control the result and the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And then once they try to control that, then their definition of what you are is based solely on the success you have. Success doesn't mean something's great or not. It just means it was successful. There's a lot of hit songs that aren't great songs. There's a lot of great songs that aren't hit songs. And if you let the results be only by, I enjoyed the struggles every bit as much and maybe more than the success. The success was easy to respond to because it was a relief, and it wasn't hard to be grateful. But those years that you struggle and you're doing what you're doing, and you go, man, my ears tell me I'm okay. My ears tell me I can hang with any of these people, and then it doesn't happen, and it can be deflating. But I've never let either the struggling years or the successful years be my definition of what I had to offer and how good I was at what I was doing. It's weird, and I like what I'm doing now that goes largely unnoticed, way more than the stuff that was noticed by the whole world.
Mm.
I think it's better. My ears tell me it's better, so I'm not letting the results dictate my value.
Yeah.
Or my worth or my talent or any of those things, because you can't control them. At any point, I couldn't control the fact that my records weren't happening, and I couldn't control the fact that they were. I just did the work and threw it out there, and it was out of my hands the whole time. So I'm not going to go rah, 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 I'm successful. Because just as much time that I wasn't, so it didn't ever matter to me.
When did you have that first, because I know you were in LA in 76 and then moved to Nashville in 83, and I believe, if I'm right on those dates.
Yeah.
Where was that? Because with Pure Prairie League, they were on the come up. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? The thing the way I look at it at all these points was in 1975, I left home to play in a bluegrass band. And it was a band that was well known. They made records. So in the world that I was in of bluegrass, I was doing about as good as you could hope to do. And then a step from a couple of bluegrass bands later to becoming a part of Pure Prairie League and and I was all of a sudden I was in a rock and roll band, and it felt like I was making progress, not so much the results of where those things were, but you have to kind of, I guess, be honest enough to look at what you're involved in the completeness of it, and hold it up to what's going on at the time. And so in those years, make a couple $100 a week. I'm not killing it, but I feel successful because I'm a professional musician. I'm playing with some of the best musicians there are. And Rodney's band, after Pure Prairie League, and Roseanne's band, those musicians were better than the previous musicians I'd played with. And so to me, it's positive because I'm around better music, better songs, better everything. And did that translate for me as a solo artist? Not for a while. But at the same time I was doing all those things for myself in my own career, I was also singing on hundreds of records and playing on tons of records that let me know you have enough talent to be a part of the thing. And so that felt like success. And everywhere I've gone, it's always in my heart, it has had enough input on me that what I was doing was significant, and part of the process. I didn't get the lion's share of the attention, but I didn't mind, because honestly, in those early days, buying records and figuring out how to play, I liked the session guys. I liked the guys on the back of a record jacket. And I aspired to that long before I had a hairbrush in the mirror thinking I wanted to be Elvis. Mm-hmm. I never really wanted, that was never part of my plan. So kind of, I look at my career in the entirety of it, mm-hmm. and the different places I've got to go stretch and go play and do a duet with Diana Krall and do a duet with Barbra Streisand and Ralph Stanley and, George Jones on the other side of the spectrum. And I love the chameleon kind of aspect to it all. That's mm-hmm. what, to me, made me a more complete musician, was being able to not only walk into one world and be able to do it, but to walk into several mm-hmm. and be able to contribute and be authentic and be a part of it. That felt as successful as a hit record in a way, because you had enough talent, people would want you to be a part of something they were doing. That felt successful to me.
Yeah. Outside of music, what do you think carried you through? Because there's great musicians that you don't want to be around, and then there's musicians that are a great hang.
Sure.
So do you feel like that was really important for you?
Well, sometimes it was out of your control.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, what I've loved most about making music is that it feels way more democratic than anything we do socially or in politics or in our country or any of that, because you get 5 or 6 musicians together and somebody has a song and you all work for the common good of that song. Mm-hmm. And nobody cares who gets the attention or the credit or any of that. You all band together and say, let's make this song great. And that to me is pretty democratic.
Yeah.
So everything I feel like I'm involved in centers around that spirit. Even when I'm a solo artist and I'm out there doing my own thing and singing my own songs and I'm the boss and blah, 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 I still feel like a band, and a democratic band where everybody is doing what they need to do to make it work. I think a lot of that goes back to playing bluegrass. Playing bluegrass well, everybody has to carry their weight, or it won't work. And so I was around a ton of great musicians that made you play up to their level. And then whether I'm, now I'm playing with the Eagles and that's fun. But what I'm doing is important to making what they do work. I don't have the lion's share of the attention. I don't want it. I never did. I was never that compelled by needing it or anything. So that's what Don Henley said about me when I first started playing with him. Is somebody asked him in the press, I said, why'd you get the country guy to be in your band? Because he knows how to be in a band. Mm-hmm. You know, and I knew going in what they needed was a singer. And, you know, after I think we were getting ready to do the first gig, and Don heard me singing, Whenever You Come Around at sound check, just me and the guitar, just doing a sound check. And he came up to me and goes, what is that? What is that song? That's gorgeous. I said, it's a song I had out, 15 years ago or whatever. He goes, we need to work that up and do it. I said, well, with all due respect, I'd rather not. And he said, why? I said, well, I don't want to give these people one more reason to not like me. I don't want anybody sitting out there saying, I didn't come here to hear Vince's songs. I came here to hear the Eagles. He goes, oh, I respect that. I see where you're headed. And then, so that's cool.
That says a lot about you too. I want to say, because and we can cut anything out of this podcast, by the way, you've been approached numerous times about doing a signature guitar by different companies. You turned it down. You could do your own song on the road with the Eagles, but you turned it down. And I feel like one of the things that people are drawn to and that I am drawn to in you is that you're kind, and it would be easy for someone like you to be, into themselves, deeply braggadocious. And I wonder if, you said you saw Chet play, and the way he did it was, what was your word? I forget.
It was humble.
It was humble.
Yeah.
But you have a humility about you. And where did that come from?
I don't know. I think I saw enough people act in a way that I said, boy, I don't ever want to do that. You can learn a lot about what not to do from people as you can to learn what to do. And I don't know. It didn't make sense. My family, the way I grew up, it wouldn't have been tolerated. My folks would have busted my ass, had there been that kind of, I don't like it in other people. It's just me that I don't find it attractive in any way, shape, or form, and so anyway, yeah, I told Don that, and he was cool with it. And later on, a year or so down the road, they did work up a couple of songs of mine. We played them for a while, and they didn't really ring the bell, so they didn't not necessarily fit, and it was a daunting task singing the songs that Glenn Frey sang.
Yeah,
and
can't imagine.
And I just kept, my mantra was, I'm only here because of a tragedy, the passing of Glenn, and so keep that in mind, and don't take any. Once again, don't let this go to your head.
Yeah,
because it could very easily.
Yeah,
I mean, this has been as I look back on it, this is my 8th year to do it, and the validation that it's given me, that I'm the one they asked to come and do this, after Glenn's passing. It means a lot. It means all those years, 50 years of traveling and playing in bands and making records and being who I am and all that stuff. It rang the bell in a way that compelled them to say, hey, that guy would fit. I mean, that's what I like most about it, is anybody that sees it. The people that don't know me are usually critical and saying, I don't like the country guy being in this rock band. He doesn't fit. And I go, everything about the way I play and sing is right up their alley, and because you don't know me well enough to know that, I understand why you wouldn't get it.
Yeah. And even your music is not, to me, it's more Eagle-esque to me.
Sure. It's both.
Because you have a layered harmonies on choruses.
Sure.
And the things that I love that I think attracted my dad to the Eagles, back in the day, which is the 3 tapes I grew up on were the Eagles Greatest Hits Volume 2, Fleetwood Mac Greatest Hits, and Beatles White Album. And,
there you go.
And that's all we listened to. But my favorite of all of them was the Eagles.
Yeah.
But I think something about those harmonies.
Those harmonies
so
and those songs.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what I think it is more than than all that stuff. There were great singers, there were great harmonies, there were great, all those kinds of things, great players. But man, who shows up with the best songs are going to be what create longevity. And that's the reason that band has been around for 52 years and people still like to hear those songs. You know, and that's what Don says now. He said, it's really about the songs, you know. We can't reproduce them. You know, Randy's gone, Glenn's gone, and you can't change that, you know. And so the songs are good enough that nobody really cares who sings them.
Yeah. Well, I got the pleasure of seeing you guys in Nashville when you were here, and it was cool to see you. And I don't know if you remember this, but me and you had talked because I wanted to bring my dad to the show. You know, and
I remember.
And
played your guitar.
You played my guitar. Well, here's the interesting thing. I want to let you in on a little more about that.
All right.
And so it was our first concert together, and it was November. I looked it up this morning because I wanted to see when it was. It was November 19th, 2005, at Arco Arena in Sacramento. We saw the Eagles on their farewell tour.
The first of many.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, you never know how many farewells you can do. Right?
Yeah.
And then I had this gut feeling that was kind of one of those things where it was like, the Eagles are going to be here. Let's go see the Eagles. And he, at the time, was on an oxygen concentrator that he could carry with him.
Right.
And we went, and you were kind enough to play a guitar that I want to come back to on a few songs. And so my dad got to see you play my guitar with our favorite band as his last concert ever. And now he can't really leave the house. He's on oxygen 24/7, and it's like this full circle, beautiful thing that you helped make happen and were a part of that we'll never forget, and I'll never forget. And the whole reason that, because I told you Nashville's kind of kicked our butt, you know.
Yeah.
It's been hard, and I know for you had a wife and a child, and you're doing music for a living, probably not getting rich. What was that like?
It was lean, you know, and it is hard, but what happens if and when it turns around is you get to experience a gratefulness that you didn't know existed in you, you know?
And that's where belief in yourself comes from, because you had, and I think that it's a story a lot of people know, the Dire Straits gig opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know what year that was.
Well, that was in those lean years.
In the lean years. And what did you say?
I just told myself, I said, look, Mark called and offered me to come and do a world tour and play in the band, and I didn't have a whole lot going on. I was going to make my next record, which was When I Call Your Name. And it was going to be with a new record company and kind of get a fresh start. And I told Mark, I said, as bad as I need to do this would solve every financial woe I had, you know. I said, but I told him, I said, dude, if I don't believe in me, nobody else is going to. Mm-hmm. So if I take this gig and bail on 6-7 years of trying to make my way into this country music world, it'd kind of be like, to me, it would be admitting failure. And I wasn't willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so I said, this sounds like a really dumb way to respond to this. You know, most people would take the sure thing. But to me, I threw caution to the wind and said, I'm gonna bet on myself, you know, because I think I have something to offer this music. You know, It hadn't happened yet, but it might, and I don't want to miss the boat.
I think that's beautiful. And then you have your record, which is basically the breakthrough record.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about even that is, when I tell you how important songs are, after I turned Mark down, I released a couple of singles, and they didn't do very well either off of that new record. And so it was like kind of the same old, you know, I'd pick a spot to die on the charts at 38 or 31 or 27, you know, all the numbers. And so two singles off of that record, and not much more than that kind of thing. And then bam, When I Call Your Name came out and changed my whole life. It was that career record that everybody dreams of. Just the right song at the right time, and even that was surprising in that it was a 4-minute and 48-second waltz. 1989, 1990. Not very many people did waltzes back then, and not very many people had whiny, crying steel guitar solos in them and all that stuff, and all that bluegrass harmony with Patty Loveless. And that record was amazing, and I was so grateful of how traditional it was, that my real breakthrough signature record was a real traditional country record. It wasn't trying to be up-tempo pop and catchy and this and that, and it meant the world to me. And I remember when we were making that record, there were three things that happened. First thing was we'd cut the track and nobody thought that much of the song. They weren't going, hey, we've got a record of the year here and blah, 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 Grammy winner, whatever. We just had this long waltz, and it didn't have an intro. And a piano player named Barry Beckett, I called him and said, will you come play on this song I've cut? I think it's pretty neat. And he said, sure. So he comes in at 1 or 2 in the morning after being in session all day, and he was tired and came in and played that intro, which was the thing that defined the record. All of a sudden it had its definition of what it was musically. And after it was a hit, he was a good friend of mine, close friend of mine, and we had a celebration party or whatever, and he came up to me and big bear hug and said, man, congratulations. We've all been hoping for this for a long time, and you finally did it. You finally cracked the code. And he said, by the way, he goes, who's playing piano on that record? And I started laughing. I go, are you kidding me? And he goes, no. I said, it's you.
Oh, really?
He said, really? I said, yeah, you came in about 2 in the morning and played that intro and the solo and really defined the song. And he goes, oh, wow, no wonder I liked it. And then Paul Franklin played the steel guitar solo on that, and we've been friends for 40 years now. And I remember he played a solo on the tracking date, but it was kind of pedestrian. It wasn't really weepy and doing all those things that I love a steel guitar voice of what the steel guitar can really do. And I called him up and I said, hey, would you mind coming back down here and replaying that solo on that waltz? And he goes, well, I liked what I played. And I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, I do too. I said, but what I'm wanting to do, I'm wanting to hear that instrument really, really cry like it used to, and nobody lets it do that anymore. And he wasn't happy. He came down and he was mad at me, and replayed it, and with all the great bending thing, all that stuff, and then it became a hit. And he pulled me aside and he said, I need to tell you thank you for asking me to replay that solo, because now it's one of those steel guitar solos that's, like Together Again and Look at Us, and some of those solos that are pretty iconic in the world of steel guitar. And then those two things happened, and then Patty Loveless came to sing harmony on it. And when she opened her mouth and sang the first line of harmony, Tony looked at me and I looked at him and went, okay, this thing's got something now, So
you felt the magic.
Yeah, but it was those things that added to and defined and made that song special, made that record special, that were every bit as much to do with its success as me writing the song and singing the song.
Mm-hmm. And because those songs, for people that aren't songwriters listening to this and watching this, they generally start out with an acoustic guitar.
Sure. But you think about how many records are identifiable because of an intro somebody plays. Or
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
They generally start out that way, but then you put the clothes on them.
Exactly.
And then when you put the clothes on them, you have a lot of decisions to make. Just like you calling Paul and saying, hey, I need you to come back.
Yeah.
And the less is more approach has been something that I would say I don't know how long you've had that mentality, but I know for myself, the older I get, the less I try to play. And as a young guy, you're always like, how many notes can I play to show off, to try to prove yourself?
Yep.
When was that?
Well, I think it just takes time. It just takes experience, and I think my goal is to move you by something that I'll play, not impress you. There's a big difference. Mm-hmm. There's a giant difference in those two things. And I was in a session as a young kid and session playing, and I played a solo, and the guy comes on the talk back, goes, man, that was something. He said, let's try it again. He said, but this time, just play me half of what you know. It's like getting a knife in the heart, I said, I get your point, and it is funny when you're young, you want to play to impress, you want to show off, you want people to notice you, and I think it's quite the opposite if you'll look at the economy of what it is that you're trying to do, then you can say a whole lot more with a whole lot less, I've found. And you play something and it points you in a way, so okay, if I took those two notes out and just maybe bent that first note a little slower, and it's all the subtleties, once again, we talked earlier about who you're playing for. I'm playing for me. I'm singing for me. I gotta get it past my test before anything else, and that's the way. I played a little something on a friend's record yesterday, and just I love how you play a phrase and go, okay, if I didn't rush that note, if I laid that back, if I took that note out, I think, and you just try to find a way to say what you can without trying too hard.
Yeah. That's the beauty of art and the beauty of music and the beauty in life, is I think that culturally we never have that approach that you have with the instrument to life.
Yeah, and I remember years ago I was going to produce my first record, and I had a really dear friend who's since passed, and Fred Foster, who did quite a lot of great things here. And he was a record executive and a record producer, and great career. And I called him up and I said, I'm getting ready to produce my first record and I need some advice, and he said, okay. And he said, I said, tell me what I should do. He said, well, here's all you need to remember. He said, when you see a piece of art that's beautiful, he said, do you notice the frame? I went, no. He goes, that's your job. You just go frame the picture. And it was powerful. It's like, well, yeah, there you go. So if all your decisions are merely trying to subtly make something better, then that's kind of the way all of us kind of go about it here, I think.
Yeah.
There's some that don't get it and want to play a lot and sing a lot and do riffs and do, as much as they can. And that's exhausting. As a listener, it is to me. It
is. And
it's not a right or wrong thing. This is not me saying this is the way you should do it. It's only the way I like to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't begrudge anybody that can sing the phone book, that can play every note in the vocabulary and blow everybody away. Have at it, But it's not for me.
Yeah. No, because it can get old after about 2 songs of that. And then
if a singer's giving you everything they've got, the first few lines of the song, there's nowhere for it to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the beauty to me of music is that patience of telling a story and letting it build, let it have a beginning, a middle, and let it go somewhere.
Yeah. When you told me a story at breakfast one time about you were playing either guitar or BGVs for Emmylou Harris, and you had gotten, I'm going to see if I repeat the story
I know
right.
I know what you're talking about.
You had gotten an opportunity last minute to sing for this national
jingle. Yeah. Miller's made the American way.
Yeah.
It was, at the time, this guy asked me to come sing that. It wound up being the biggest buy in advertising history. So it was probably a six-figure loss. And these were in the lean years, too. First Mark and then Miller
But what
Beer.
was the reason? I mean, this is what I want to drive home.
The Emmy Lou asked me to do some demos with her. Me and Carl Jackson and Emery Gordy were going to do some gospel bluegrass recordings. And she just said, I just want to get together and go through some tunes to see what it sounds like and blah, blah, blah. And so there was no money in it. And it was just for friends. And it was that same morning, and they called me and said, can you come down here and sing this jingle? I said, no. I promised Emmy I'd go do these demos with her. So this is a pretty big deal here. Turn it down. I said, well, I got to keep my word. I told Emmy I'd be there. So if a better deal comes along, you can't just take it.
I got to keep my word.
Yeah, you got to do what you say you'll do.
So that's something I just want to pause on, because that is character, and that is something that I feel like culturally people have lost. This is a generalization, but as a whole, it's real. It would have, most people these days, I would say, would take the gig that paid. Now, I could be wrong, but what I wanted to say about it was that the character side was more important than the money, and the relationship was more valued than the money, and your word was your word, and a yes was a yes.
Yeah.
And you've had a relationship with Larry Fitzgerald, your manager, over 20 years?
40
years?
On a handshake.
And times two. On a handshake. No paperwork. People.
No,
listen.
I mean, it's not hard to be kind. It's not hard to be nice. It's all those things they're really easy to do, and they matter. They may not look like they matter in the moment, but over a lifetime, if you've I've made my mistakes over the years, like anybody else, and done some dumb stuff, but for the most part, I keep my word. And I like working with people I want to work with, and so a piece of paper is not going to make me more inclined to work with you. It's just like life's too short to not be around people that you want to be around. And there are still fair people. There are still generous people. They're in abundance. Hard to find sometimes. You get around some people that don't do it the right way, and that can make you think, oh, that's the way everybody is. That's what's weird to me is people will say to me, I'm so surprised you're normal. It's like, it almost hurts my feelings.
Why?
I said, man,
Why does it?
It's like, just because somebody's experienced some success, their expectation of you goes way down. That you're going to be a jerk. You're going to be, high and mighty and all those things. And it's like, well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Have that thought about you before you ever even meet somebody.
But you also can't be perfect all the time either.
No.
And which brings me to your golf game.
Okay.
Have you broken some clubs in your day?
Way back in the early days. Not so much anymore.
Not anymore?
Not so much anymore. But I'll tell you something interesting. You probably never heard me tell this story, but people like to be able to have something that they can criticize you about. It's human nature, and if you've done this and accomplished this, they want to be able to bring you down a little bit if they can. I mean, culturally, we love to see somebody fall from grace. That is it's so apparent, but yeah, it was the one thing people could go, yeah, but you get really mad on the golf course. I go, well, yeah, so what? I have an expectation, I'm driven to play to a certain standard, and at times I do play that way, as good as anybody that plays the game. Other days I'm equally as bad, but
it gives you an outlet too outside of music, and having to be on all the time too.
Yeah, but here's this. I was going to tell you this. I played golf with a sports psychologist one time, and he took care of all these different tour players and all these guys that were my buddies. Would give me all the grief, and I played about 5 or 6 holes with him. I said, well, Doc, I said, I know you've heard all the stories about me. And he started laughing and goes, yeah, you got a pretty good reputation out there. I said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, first of all those guys that give you all the grief, said, they're worse than you've ever been at all that. He said, they just have to control it because it's their job and that's their world, and they have to, do it the right way. And he said, I'm going to tell you some things that might surprise you. I'll bet you've probably never heard before. And I said, okay, have at it. And he said, well, first of all, that drive that makes you so compelled to be so good at golf, he said, it's the reason you're successful in your music. He said, because you expect the same thing of yourself musically, and probably in all things that you do, you want to do things very well. I said, yeah, I do. And he said, first of all, he said, that's the reason you're successful. But the other thing is, he said, you think about what you do for a living. He said, you stand up in front of people every night and all you hear is adulation. You hear people cheer, clap and go nuts for you. He said, that's pretty abnormal. That's not normal. He said, so you might be the only person that I would ever say this to, but I think it's really healthy for you to beat yourself up a little bit. It's going to be something that helps keep you level, And so in a way, it kind of keeps you from getting high and mighty. It kind of keeps you from getting arrogant, thinking you're the bee's knees and all that stuff. And Amy said something similar to me when we just got acquainted. We were playing golf together one time. We were both married to different people, and we crazy about each other, but we never thought anything was going to happen. We said, oh, glad I met somebody I really like, And we're playing golf, and I got mad and stuck a club in the bag and broke the head off. And then I was embarrassed, because she turned around and says, oh. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I can get pretty worked up playing this game. She goes, oh, that doesn't surprise me. I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, she says, I'm crazy about you, and I watch everything you do. She said, who laughs harder than you do when something's funny? I said, fair. She said, who falls apart in front of the whole world? Not afraid to cry in front of the whole world? Me. She goes, now you've hit a golf shot and you're angry. You're mad. She says, you can't control any of your emotions. Mm-hmm. How would you ever expect to be able to control one? And I thought, man, only two people, have ever really said anything constructive and positive and redeeming about, having a temper and all that stuff. It was really pretty powerful. And it helped, in that, oh, wow, finally. Because most people, man, they look down their nose at you and they criticize you and make fun of you and take you down and don't think you're a good human if you get uptight on the golf course or get, just a temper in general.
Yeah.
So, but man, everybody's got one. Everybody's got a breaking point, and they all get there someday.
Yeah. It's interesting that she not recognized that. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's because of her experience as well, too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but how beautiful to see a positive reaction.
Yeah.
Instead of a negative. Everybody's going to be, like, men crazy. Too.
Oh, yeah.
Men too, especially.
Yeah. I ain't golfing with this guy.
I ain't playing with this guy. Yeah. Gets mad.
But it was nothing.
You'll never be any good if you don't get mad.
It was nothing but grace.
Nothing it was
but
beautiful.
Grace with you. So you don't text?
No, not yet.
I would love for you to just say that, because I think it's interesting.
What do you mean?
Well, I think talking on the phone's a lost art.
Well, it's more personal.
It is.
I think most people don't enjoy communicating with people. That's why they text all the time.
I think they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and maybe, this is easier. I can just type it out and I don't have to, It seems, and it seems to, I've seen people that can text 900 miles an hour, and that's impressive. But I'm what they call a hunting pecker. I got to look for the letter, and if I do that, all that, so this will take me forever. Amy and I were planning a Christmas concert, and we were going to ask a couple of guests or whatever, and she goes, you get a hold of this person, and I'll get a hold of da-da-da-da-da. Well, I had called all three people by the time she'd finished her first text. I said, my way's a lot faster.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
That's
so
how I am.
I remember somebody asked me if they'd get a picture with me somewhere out on the road, and I said, sure. And we took the picture, and she says, we have a mutual friend. And she says, you could text him this picture if you want to. And I said, I don't text. And she said, well, I can show you how. I said, ma'am, it's not a question of being able to. It's a matter of wanting to.
It's the principle.
Yeah, but I don't know. I see it.
I like it. I like it about you.
Well,
I love it, actually. I don't just like it. I love it.
Yeah.
Because because that's how I had to get, I think, I forget who it was that told me initially that you only call.
Yeah.
But when I learned that, I was like, all right, I'm comfortable on the phone. I'm going to give him a ring and say hi and tell him we live in town now. And you had called me back, and it was cool. And over the years of being here, and the older I get, the more I like talking on the phone now, and the more I hate texting, because you can get so much done faster, and there's the personal part.
Well, yeah, and then the written word doesn't inflect like the spoken word.
Mm-mm.
And what's written, you could take that a number of ways. If you don't hear somebody chuckling in the background when they're saying it, you don't know that. It's like, that's kind of harsh.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just, I think it's more laziness than anything else. Just, I don't really want to sit and type.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not trying to prove a point or think I'm right and I don't cast aspersions on anybody that texts. I think it's impressive watching them go double thumbing, and it's like, wow.
But to me, it's like simple. It's like picking up an acoustic, and just, it's the purity of a guitar, playing a guitar, or just the having a conversation. There's something more maybe holistic about it. I don't know what the right word is, but that's kind of how I view it.
For me, I kind of see myself as being really, really, really good at living in the moment.
Ooh.
And a lot of people can't.
I'm terrible at that.
And
What's your secret?
Well, I realized, and I think I understand, that this moment is all there is. Mm-hmm. Bus may hit you tonight on the way out of town. Or you never know. And so yesterday's gone. You can't bring that back. So this is really all there is. And if you can't find comfort and some peace and all of that in the moment, then you're going to struggle, And I never have. I'm a reactor more than I don't plan stuff. I'm not good at that. So I just kind of react to the moment, the conversation, and the this, the that, or where we're going. We're going to go eat. I don't plan where we're going to go eat. What do you feel like, And you just embrace that moment, because that's really all there really is.
Yeah, mindfulness. It's almost like seeing the peripheral vision instead of just the one thing in front of you.
Yeah, that's what Amy says about me. She says, you're really great at seeing the field. Mm-hmm. You see things in kind of in their entirety, I guess. And her strong suit is seeing the best in people.
Yeah.
And I'll see a little bit of all of it.
So I'm 35. I don't know exactly where you're at in your career if you were to track back to then. And everybody's path's different.
Sure.
So where I'm at is different than where you were at, which is different from where everybody is. But if you could go back and you could talk to the 20, 30-year-old version of yourself, looking back, is there anything that you would tell them as a word of advice from the future, mature, or more mature maybe, person?
I don't know. I think I would tell myself to be patient as much as anything, and try not to control it all, because you can't. That's what's so funny is I write a song and put it out, and I don't have any control over whether somebody's going to like it or not like it. So why worry, and stress and get all uptight about, it's like the weather. Why get uptight about the weather? You can't change it. It just is what it is. And that's kind of, to me, what life is. This day is what today is, and it's all there is in it. Make the most of it.
Yeah.
Trying to think what I was doing when I was 35. Not sure I can remember.
I'm terrible at remembering.
But I was going through a pretty good streak, of killing it,
Because I find for myself, like, the comparison game's so hard.
Right.
And like hearing you say that even, or seeing other people that are successful in music, but the patience part is what's important for me to remember, because I'll say like, yeah, at my age you were killing it, and like I look at myself where I am, and then I think to myself, well, am I good enough? Like, do I not have what it takes? You get those questions that you maybe asked yourself at a time or two.
But one thing you probably wouldn't consider is, what did I do from the time I was 10 until I was 35?
Yeah.
Would you compare that? And if you compared that, I would bet that what I invested and what I did and what I tried to do and accomplished and all those things would probably be a good bit more than most 35-year-old people.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, being with Ricky Skaggs in your team.
18.
Yeah.
And it's, I was making records when I was still in high school. I was trying, I was playing clubs. I was all about it.
Yeah.
That's
that 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, it's pretty true. And I mean, everybody works hard. I don't think I don't think you can say I outworked you to have my success. I just, somebody showed up with the right song at the right time and took their rightful place, and everybody passes it on down, doesn't last, regardless of the kind of lick you hit,
Yeah.
It may last a little while. It may last 10 years. It may last 20, but it won't last forever.
How have you dealt with rejection?
I think I was okay with it if I was willing to be honest. Some people aren't willing to be honest, and I like to read the comments people make about me, because sometimes I think they're way off base, and sometimes I go, he's got a point. Sometimes they're, that's cruel, but that's fair. That's, and I'm not. I mean, some of them are hysterical. People can say some mean
Trolls.
stuff. My God, it's brutal. It's hysterical. It's all those things, and even though somebody has an opinion or has something they want to say, it's not changing the price of gas.
Yeah.
So I never believed the good things they said about me, and I never believed the bad things they said about me. I was pretty comfortable knowing what I know, and I lay on the pillow at night and go, okay, I'm good with where I am, who I am, and what I've been, what I've done, what I will do. And what I realized, I think I'm almost 67, and it really has never changed. So what you make of it is everything. You can be bitter, you can be grateful, you can be angry, you can be a lot of things. So I just kind of let most of it roll off my back, and I know who I am.
That's awesome. I know you're a Merle Haggard fan, favorite artist of all time, best songwriter in the world. You've been quoted to say, I believe, correct?
Yeah,
What's your desert island record?
Oh, Mama Tried, probably. I think that epitomizes what it is that we search for. We search where we love melancholy. We love despair. We love desperateness. We love loneliness, all those things. But we also love hope. And that to me is all in one fell swoop with him. I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. Okay, how much sadder does it get than that? Okay, can't get any sadder. Then he follows that up with, no one can steer me right, but Mama tried. And there's hope. And so all of a sudden there's the ultimate despair and then the ultimate hope back to back.
Yeah.
And I always liked that, and I talk about Merle, why his perspective of songs were so great to me was because he was in prison. He had his freedom taken away from him. He knew what that really felt like. He didn't just pretend what it might feel like.
Yeah.
He lived it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden his perspective has a different kind of wisdom about it.
Mm-hmm.
and real life experience about it. And I loved hearing him say when they asked him, said, what's your mantra? And he said, man, just tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think what you lied about, said about this or that. He said, you just tell the truth all the time. You don't have to spend your life defending it, and I love that. I love that he was a musician. I love that he respected musicians. All those things. Yeah, he was a mess, but he owned it. A lot of those greats owned their dysfunction.
A mess, but a mentor.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
and mentorship's very important. And you had some great mentors.
Oh yeah. But the reason people are so I think we all want to see redemption, and Merle's a great example of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Of going from prison to being maybe one of the top 4 or 5 greatest artists of all time in country music, and that's a great redemption story.
Yeah, and a reminder that it's never too late to start life over. But
we because he was so great at it, everybody forgave all the, same with George Jones, same with Cash, same with all these people. They were all a mess at times, but they were cool enough and honest enough to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And if people felt like you were trying to not be truthful and not be honest about it, they might be quicker to disengage and move on to something else. But because they were all so great, you kind of had a more forgiving spirit. Well, it's okay. It's George Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let it go that he didn't show up and sing in Birmingham the other night, wherever it was.
Yeah.
And Merle too. I was playing with Merle opening for him the night the IRS shut him down or took confiscated all of his stuff. And
these things. Was he living up north in California?
Yeah, he always lived in Lake Shasta.
Yeah. I read his autobiography some years back. But he had a very troubled childhood, and it wasn't just prison once. It was
it was everything leading up to that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Of course.
Oh, I had to tell you about the guitar thing. I have to tell you while I'm thinking about it, because this is just how I'll end it. I'll be vulnerable.
It's a good way to be.
Just tell the truth is what you just said. So I guess that's what I should do. So I pawned my guitar off to you. You bought it from me because I needed some money.
Yeah.
And what I needed it for was because when we moved here, my wife's here, she's behind the camera on these episodes. I always had anxiety, but it got real bad. And there was no medication they could put me on that would fix it. So there's this place called the Amen Clinic in Atlanta. So I went and I got my brain scanned, and it was about what I got for the guitar. And that scan showed a bunch of stuff, and they were able to diagnose and treat me based off of the activity in my brain.
Right.
And it was a life-saving event. I found out so many things about my health, but that really turned the tide on me being able to be a functional person.
Yeah.
And that's never a story I was going to share or plan to, but thinking about it, I think that just says a lot. And I wanted to let you know, kind of, and for people that struggle with mental health, just in general, because it's stigmatized a bit. And
sure,
I had to reach out, and you helped me, and I just really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man, it's easy. Glad to do it. Amy she's a big believer in brain therapy with this thing called Cereset. And it makes total sense to me in that, I know there is a stigma with mental health, but I feel like your brain's just like your elbows and your knees, your
Exactly.
everything else, and things fail. Things go wrong, and kidney. I had a buddy just had his kidney taken out, and it's a form of balancing your brain through frequencies, and it takes an image of your brain and shows you where it's. You ought to look into it if you want to. There's a Sarah Sett office here in Green Hills, and she's invested in it and learned how to do the treatments and all that kind of stuff. And they look at your brain and know where it needs what this or that. I don't know much about it. I'm kind of an idiot, and then they just play frequencies in headphones, and it does an amazing thing of balancing your brain.
Wow.
You know, look into it, but
and she feels a difference.
Yeah, it's pretty staggering the benefits that people have had from doing it. There was a guy who was a PTSD military guy, and since his accident, he hadn't been able to sleep through the night. And since he had Sarah Sett, now he can sleep through the night. And
wow.
Things like that. Just kids that can't focus and can't study and can't, struggle with things. And Amy's done it, and she had that head injury. And everybody that finds their way to it it's been very beneficial.
Cool. Appreciate you saying that too, because that is worth people checking out. Mm-hmm. I'm always looking for that because so much mental health stuff about neuroplasticity and the brain can be rewired and all that stuff. I mean,
yeah, what I like about it is it's not invasive at all.
Yeah.
It's just all done with frequencies, and we are being musical. We're drawn to frequencies, which are notes and songs and melodies and things. So
vibrations.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. There's a reason Good Vibrations was written.
Yeah.
What would you say to the young musician in Nashville now? Because from you moving here to now, Nashville is a completely different town.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say anything in that my way is no longer relative, relatable. That's the right word? I don't think that's the right word.
No, I think it was right.
Yeah, but it's
because you were in it at a different time.
My way's way different of how you find your way.
Now it's TikTok.
Yeah, we dug it out of the clubs. We dug it out of whatever, and they've got now you can. The whole world's available there at your phone, and way to connect. And record companies are different. The way they find artists. First question they ask you now is, "Let me see your socials."
Yeah,
it's like, what?
Yeah,
I'd like to hear your songs and hear you sing first.
Yeah, what about the music? What about that part of the equation?
But you know what? The great stuff still kind of seems to show up.
Yeah,
I think in every generation.
I think you're right.
Yep.
Cool. Well, it's been a blessing to have you.
Thanks, buddy.
And I appreciate your time and the time that we've had together, and you pouring into me some, and just I really appreciate it. And that's a wrap on today's episode with Vince Gill. Thank you for being here. Please hit subscribe, like, share. If you dug this episode, again, hitting subscribe really helps the channel. The majority of people that are listening are not subscribed, and it doesn't take a lot, but it does really help us. So please consider hitting that subscribe button. At Stephan Hogan on Instagram. All of my socials are below in the comments, in the show comments. And I hope to see you guys here again for another episode. Have a great week.